What is something rich people buy that poor people know nothing about? Kidnapping insurance. Rich Russian businessmen rent taxis that are luxurious on the inside, but look like ambulances on the outside to avoid traffic. Autoblog.com. Obscure brands of regular items. I have a few well-off friends and trust fund babies, and all of them need obscure brands of regular items. They want potato chips. It can't be Lay's, it has to be a imported thin-cut potato from France that was harvested by the bay on a cool afternoon by a happy French man. My sister used to work at a very expensive hotel in London. She told me that new clients would check in, and then once they left the room the staff would go in and inventory everything they brought with them and where they put it, and how with the help of staff they set the room up. They do this so the next time the client schedules a room, the staff can run out and buy everything on the list, so the client doesn't have to have any luggage and everything is set up how they like it. They have thousands of clients, and she showed me pictures of room layouts and lists of clothing, watches, and other things that are always set up the same for the same client. Crazy stuff. Welcome back, MR. 6. We have purchased a dead prostitute and placed it under the bed just like we know you prefer. This is embarrassing. But until last year, I am now 24, it did not occur to me that people could file their own taxes and not use an accountant. Or rather, John, the family accountant. Edit. Forgot to tell you about John. I heard a story once about a young Russian man who inherited $20 billion and decided to eventually get married. For his bachelor party, he invited all his boys to Russia, escorted them in a black car right from the runway, and they were driven 4 hours deep into the Russian forest. They stopped at a random hotel for the night, and then in the morning, they were dropped off in the middle of the forest. All of a sudden, a bunch of Russian men riding horses and dressed in traditional Russian battle armor surround the guys. They tell the guys that, in honor of their boy's marriage, they are going to get suited up, ride horses, and rape and pillage a nearby village. I kid you not. Their billionaire friend purchased a random, small Russian village deep in the forest, rented 54 of the best prostitutes in Russia, 18 guys x 3 girls each, to act as the villagers, rigged the entire place to be suitable for raping and pillaging, and finally, placed 18 huge cubes of frozen ice inside each of the houses in the village. These giant ice cubes contained precious jewels, Rolex watches, money, and other valuables. The 18 guys were all given a time limit, and the girls were incentivized with money to distract the guys as much as possible in their quest to break down the solid ice blocks. I will let your imagination run wild. Poor people. This is basically how Dubai was built almost overnight. From what I've seen in Switzerland, most very rich people don't actually appear to be rich. They live in big houses, but it's all very private, and they don't show off their wealth like other less rich people that try to show off everything they own and don't own. The houses are usually in remote places and with walls or bushes to stop you from seeing what's inside. The typical nouveau rich will just show off their mansion at every opportunity. A very rich guy is not the one that is driving a Ferrari and slowing down to revving his engine near women. A very rich guy is the one that you don't actually see. You merely feel the wealth when the occasional Bentley or Rolls-Royce passes by without making heads turn. Some anecdotal story that happened with me. I was at an ATM machine in Switzerland, behind an old lady that looked to be quite poor. When it was my turn to use the machine, I noticed that she didn't remove her card, and I could still check how much money she had in her bank account and even withdraw money. She had around 8 million Swiss francs. And yes, I called her and told her that she forgot to remove her card. CS. Ghostkins. Fake love. Yes men. People who will pretend that you are brilliant and correct and righteous and meaningful when really you are just rich. Poor people don't understand what it means for someone to act respectful and sincerely, because no one would ever do that to a poor person. A lot of people have multiple cars, but rich people have cars specifically for the weekend. During the week you drive your average S-Class Lexus/7 Series that you don't mind subjecting to cruel traffic. But from Thursday to Sunday you drive your weekend car. These fall on 3 spectrums: antiques, sports cars, or luxury cars. I don't know much about the antiques, but I love going for drives in the area on Fridays just to look at the Rolls-Royce Phantoms and Lambos. Lambos Ferraris are usually driven by younger rich people, Arabs and athletes, and are seen at night usually racing. The luxury cars are the old people. Maseratis are not weekend cars. They're work cars. And every Saturday morning there's a car show in our town. Also banks. If you're rich, you usually are a preferred customer at multiple big name banks. They know you by name and know your family, and you can give upper level management personal calls for help. I live in Nick and work as a courier. I regularly deliver things like $50 cookies, 4 of them, across town for a $15 delivery charge. $65 for 4 cookies. Then I must go through the service entrance under the building, as I am not allowed in the regular halls. Upon arriving I hand the cookies to the servant who answers the door that is in an elevator that opens onto the kitchen usually. I have delivered a $35 bagel. The new thing is cold pressed juices. Daily I will drop an $80 order for 4 juices plus delivery cost. So pushing a $100 for some juice. The apartment's overlooking Central Park. It's crazy. I saw a 12-year-old kid in a private school uniform wearing a brand new Apple Watch and eating with friends at a cafe that had to be $30 a head for a coffee and a snack. Then left and walked into a brownstone, $5 10 million, in Manhattan. That kid will go to a schools that I will never see. Make friends and connections that are impossible otherwise. The 1% live a different life. Different rules. Different opportunities. I think it's great for them. My only concern is the resources that are required to maintain that life are staggering. The carbon footprint. The man-hours of people serving them. Mind-boggling. I live in Sydney, Australia, and recently there was a big controversy about how students of 2 of our most expensive private schools were being secretly guaranteed spots at University of Sydney, one of the major 3 universities in Sydney, before they had even done their Year 12 finals. Everyone else in the state stresses out over Year 12 to get good grades and get a good ATA, equivalent of GPA, and these kids didn't have to lift a finger just because their parents were rich. So there's that. Valet parking keys for your car. They don't let the car go above a certain mph limit. My dad's rich but he doesn't spend much, and we've lived a middle class life even though we could be living a much lavish life. No complaints at all though. But because of my dad's wealth I am friends with wealthy people, and I have friends who live pretty wild. If I go to a club with one of my friends, the bouncer will know my friend and just let us in. Even when half of us are underage and we have no girls with us. I also dated a girl whose dad was the CEO of a very large federal funded nonprofit. I'm not allowed to mention names of politicians, but I'll tell you that House of Cards has a lot of truth to it. There's also the friends I had who were ducking idiots but still got into top-notch universities. And then there were the other not so friendly kids at my private high school whose fathers would give so much money to our high school that these kids could get away with pretty much anything. Racism. Cheating and skipping class. And me witnessing all this was weird because the way my dad raised my family with a save first mentality. I never really asked for things that much. But yeah. Rich white people crazy. You used to be able to rent a disabled person at Disneyland to get past the lines. Growing up in the 80s and 90s as a kid, all I remember is that if someone ever owned a refrigerator that had an electric ice maker and served water, I would assume they were rich. The same was said about families with kids that owned Power Wheels or had a cell phone in their car. How times have changed. The services of people like me. Want to buy a house in Monaco for £20 million but your bank won't fund it due to cross-border restrictions? Don't worry. I'll have it turned around in a few weeks. Have remittance issues but still want to acquire assets in the UK? I'll structure your whole deal to minimize the use of clean capital. Nothing mind-blowing. Really. Hunting licenses that let you shoot exotic game. Stuff like rhino or lion or elephant. You can basically buy university spots if your family donates enough cash to the university. Some family members who did really poorly into high school were let into prestigious schools and programs. I benefited from that too. Honestly. My grades were very good, 85% AVG. But I was still just under the minimum average and I had no real extracurriculars. I was let into the program I wanted. I didn't even write an essay like the other people. And then there are those hyperliberal hipster kids who buy stupid like organically farmed free trade hemp backpacks. Some people are mentioning things like hiring famous bands to play at your birthday. Or playing with famous athletes. The families who do those things usually lose their money in a generation. Unless they're Arab oil Sikhs. It'll take a bit longer for them to go broke. The private flight comments are a bit more accurate. We don't have as many hoops to jump through when we're getting into a chartered flight. Mingling with the socially politically financial elite is also true. I'm only a second year university student with above average grades and I've already met a bunch of renowned people in the industry I'm planning to go it. I was introduced to these people by my dad and grandparents. Political influence, where I live people and companies are limited in how much they can donate to politicians and parties. We don't have PACs here for example. It's not as big of a deal here. But it's easier for us to talk to politicians. Respect, it depends on how you obtained your wealth. If you're an athlete, movie star or musician you won't have much respect because those people are usually bankrupt by the end of their life. Also people from those families are somewhat infamous for their poor behavior. From what my older family members think. People who made their money though tech startups are not as respected. These people tend to be new age, untraditional and on the far left in the political spectrum. For what it's worth my family made most of their money through oil and gas. Was at a friend's house, very rich friend, and his daughter came back from school all sad. So I asked why and apparently one her classmates spread rumors about her how she's rich and snotty and always flies everywhere in private jets. She started to cry and said I don't always fly in private jets, sometimes I have to ride first class. At the time she was 7 years old. So poor people know nothing of all the struggles that the riches go through.